y'all, it's Stinger, and today I'm going to be showing you guys how to make some glitchy, hard-hitting, insano style Brakence type beats. Before we get into the tutorial, I want you to absolutely do nothing. Let's go into it. So normally the arrangement of my tutorials is usually I'll break down the melody, break down the drums, and then break down anything else that needs to be broken down. But this beat is very unique in the aspect that every 8 bars is unique. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to break it down 8 bars by 8 bars by 8 bars. So we'll start with the intro and end with the outro. So the main melody that plays pretty much throughout the entire beat is a sample from Aesthetics Across the Color Line. They're a great band and the song is called 4. So here's what it sounds like without any effects on it. When looking for guitar melodies for these types of beats, I definitely suggest looking up Midwest emo or math rock guitar loops. That genre is used a bunch with sampling for any kind of guitar hyperpop beats. I have a ton of effects on this main guitar, but the only ones that are really important are effectrics. I use this just to add a little bit of reverse and a stretch sound towards the end of the loop. And then I also have a vinyl to simulate a frequency shifter pitching down. I also have Portal with the pitch jumper preset, but the mix is very, very low because I wanted it to be pretty subtle. Next I have Fracture, which is a free glitch plugin that I use a lot when it comes to these Brakence type beats. I'm using the Crystal Factory preset, which basically gives it like little tings. I don't really know how to describe it. And since I filled out this whole mixer rack, what I did is I right-clicked a channel, hit route to this track only, that way I could add some more stuff. A lot of this is stuff that's going to come in later, but for right now I have OTT at 41% depth and Fresh Air. I use these 2 plugins just to make the melody sound a little bit more full. Now that we've got that main melody out of the way, let's cover the intro. For the intro, I have that main melody playing as well as Portal on the Dreamy Music Box preset and Fruity Reverb with these settings. And this is what it sounds like. There's a ton of automation clips right here, but most of them are going to come in later. The only ones we're focusing on right now is this Portal and the reverb. I have them automated so that it's 100% at the beginning and it gradually fades. That way there's a nice transition. I also added in this whoosh to emphasize the transition. To transition into the next part, we have this riser and this scratch sound. Now for this next portion, we throw in some drums. First thing I laid down was this kick from my Hive Stash kit. Next I threw in this little bloop sound to kind of act as a snare. Next I threw in this rim to give that snare a little bit more attack. Next I have that same rim but with a little bit of effects on it. And that's just playing a pretty basic accent pattern. For that rim, I threw on Phase Mistress with the Laser Beatbox preset, and I also threw on some Fruity Reverb. Next, I have this hat that's pitched up an octave with some effects on it. I didn't want to go with any kind of 2-step hi-hats because I wanted the beat to have a lot of bounce. And filling in those gaps kind of really takes away from some of the bounce. So I left in some space. On that, I have Phase Mistress yet again with the Phaser Attack preset, and I also have this EQ taking out some harsh frequencies. Next, I have this Bit Crushed Open Hat hitting on the downbeats. On that, I threw on D-Blue Crusher, which is a free Bit Crush plugin, and then I also threw on Fruity Reverb and a parametric EQ to boost the high mids and take out some of the lows. After that, I have this glitch sound from my mainframe glitch pack, which is yet to be released, but since you're watching this video, you get a free pre-release of the glitch pack down in the description. Here's what the glitch sounds like. I also have this second glitch playing, and a third one. This one more or less acts like a perk because I have it cut off really quickly. Next, I threw in this hyperpop snare because I didn't feel like the old snare was very impactful. And then for this portion of the melody, I have gross beat on this custom gate that kind of cuts it out and brings it in back gradually. And then I also have that same scratch at the end of the 8 bars. So this is what it sounds like. For the next 8 bars, the only thing that's different is I threw in this 808. Brakence loves to use some subby, distorted basses, so I threw on some fast distortion on the A and the B panel, as well as some wider to give it some stereo separation. So this is what these 8 bars sound like. And the only thing that's different about these next 8 bars is that I chopped the melody up a little bit so that the beginning repeats itself. And then I also cut out the drums a bit at the beginning. For the next 8 bars, I just have the main guitar melody playing, nothing much that I really need to go over there. And after that, this is where the fun part comes in. I'm introducing some live drums from SSD Sampler. SSD Sampler is a great acoustic drum VST. I highly recommend grabbing it if you don't have it already. Anytime I'm using any kind of live or acoustic drums, I always use SSD Sampler. And no, this is not a paid promotion, I'm just saying it because I genuinely like the product. So here's what the live drums sound like. So these notes that are grouped together are the rim and the snare. A popular technique when playing live drums is to hit the rim of the snare and the snare at the same time to make the drum sound more impactful. So there's a quick little tip on how to make your snares more realistically impactful. I also don't have them playing a basic pattern always hitting on the and, which is this note. I have it going 1 E and 2 E and That's a very popular technique when it comes to drill music, and I thought I'd just throw it in there just to give it a little bit more bounce. Next, I have this open hat that's being very quickly cut off by the closed hat. And right here is just a ride cymbal playing with different velocities. Then I also have this playing a quick open hat fill, and after this I have this drum fill to lead up into the big drop. I suggest getting really creative with your drum fills, especially if you're going for a vibe like this, but also keep in mind to keep it realistic. You can't play all 4 of the toms at the same time. You can't play a snare, a tom, and a crash at the same time. You only have 2 drumsticks. So keep that in mind when making these drum fills. So this is what these 8 bars sound like. Alright, so now we can move into the really fun part. Here we have the beat switch. I decided to make this switch very punk rock-esque and add in a lot of distorted guitars and some really fast-paced drums. Keep in mind that I'm not too experienced with mixing or making any kind of rock beats, so the mixing on this is pretty suboptimal, but I think it came out pretty good. So this is what the first 8 bars sound like. So for this chopped up portion, I have the main guitar melody playing, but with a lot of effects on it. So on it, I have guitar rig on the slip note wide preset. This is just a demo, so I did have to render it out in order for it not to go away within 30 minutes, but I think it's a great free plugin if you make use of rendering it out, kind of like Grossbeat. Also have in a bunch of EQs to take out a bunch of unwanted frequencies because some of the presets in guitar rig can be pretty harsh. Next, I have the Do Host guitar from Ample Guitar Metal Eclipse. With this guitar, I also have an E bass from Purity playing underneath it to give it a little bit more low end. So this is what the guitar and the bass sound like all together. I have this just playing the chords of the main guitar melody. To find the chords, I went into Edison and pitch detected the root notes, and then I just built the chords from there. All right, next we have the drums, and this is a lot to go over, so I'm just gonna play it out and break it down. So for this first portion of the drums, I didn't want the main drum break to play right away. So I started it out by playing the kick and the crash right out the jump just to surprise the listeners a bit. Then I have it go into a pretty basic punk rock fill to transition into the main drum break. When making these rolls, make sure you vary the velocity a little bit to make it sound more realistic. And then right here is a pretty basic punk rock break. From there, I copied the first portion of the drums right over here, and then I added in this extra tom fill. And then it just goes right back into that basic punk rock break. So there are the first 8 bars of the change up, so let's go into the next. For these 8 bars, I have the main melody playing all the way through except for at the end where it gets chopped out. I also have the same guitar from Ample Metal Eclipse just playing a different pattern. And this is what the pattern sounds like. I threw in a new pattern just to fill in those breaks where the main melody wasn't being chopped up, and then also provided a little bit of variation with these higher notes at the end. Next, we have this drum pattern. A great note to keep in mind when making your drums is to not have the crash and the hi-hat play at the same time. That's because on a real live drum set, it's pretty impossible to hit the crash and then the snare and the hi-hat at the same time. So what drum players do is hit the crash and then the hi-hat and the snare at the same time. So when you have a crash and a drum break, be sure to take out any other cymbals besides the ride. That's because you can play the cymbal and the ride at the same time without it being awkward. I also recommend throwing in MIDI drum fills to make your drums sound more exciting. So right here at the end, I have this one. This just makes your drum sound a whole lot more exciting and sounds like it was played with a lot more vigor. That's pretty much all I'm going to cover when it comes to the drums, because I'm not a huge expert on describing punk rock drums. I just know what they sound like. But if you do want to learn more on that, I definitely recommend checking out some tutorials on how to make punk rock drums or something in that kind of realm. So this is what these 8 bars sound like. Alright, now for the next 8 bars. On this, we still have the melody playing all the way through, nothing that I really need to go over there, but we do have a new guitar pattern. So this main guitar pattern is the same as the last one, but I threw in this extra lead to add more variation. Something I do when coming up with leads is if you have a MIDI keyboard, I'll just play the melody and try to find notes on the keyboard that sound good with the melody playing at the moment. And then from there, I'll just lay it down and tweak it a little bit, add some transition notes in between to make it sound better. And also, you guessed it, the drum pattern is different for these 8 bars as well. So this is what the new drum pattern sounds like. On this pattern, I'm playing with the same idea as I was with the first pattern, being putting a fill in the first 2 bars and then putting in the main drum break in the next 2 bars. Except this drum pattern is a whole lot more energetic because I wanted it to match the energy of that lead. And as you can see right here, we're also playing around with the rim and snare combo. So this is what those 8 bars sound like. Alright, now for the final 8 bars, we finally made it. As always, I have that main guitar melody playing with guitar rig, as well as the same electric guitar pattern from the last 8 bars. The only thing that's different about these 8 bars is the drums. For this pattern, instead of hi-hats, I decided to throw in rides, which sound like this. And I also created a little bit of call and response action with this drum pattern. So first right here, which is the call, I have the main punk rock drum pattern playing, and then it goes into the response being a drum fill. And that's also at play in this second portion right here. And then at the end, I have this very congested drum fill that ends very abruptly with the open hat being hit and shut. So this is what the last 8 bars sound like. So that's going to pretty much cover how to make a Brakence type beat. I hope you enjoyed the tutorial and learned something new today. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the comments below and I'll do my best to answer them. Other than that, it's going to be it. Peace.